Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters is the 1996 sequel to the 1995 arcade game Mega Man The Power Battle, which is a boss rush survival style game where you pick a character and engage against various robot masters in one-on-one combat or two-on-one combat, as it's also a two-player game. Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters essentially follows that same formula, but also makes certain changes and improvements to the formula that arguably makes it the superior title. Though, make no mistake, Power Fighters is still a fairly shallow game, but given its arcade origins, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Anyway, as before, you begin by picking one of 4 playable characters, the trio of the first game, Mega Man, Proto Man, and Bass, returning from the Power Battle, relatively unchanged, and you have an additional character in Duo from Mega Man 8. Or rather, a mini version of Duo, considering he was much larger in the other game. Duo is perhaps the only true unique character due to his playstyle being somewhat different from the initial 3, but Power Fighters does grant each of the 4 players a special move that can be performed by holding up while charging your attack. It's not a huge difference maker in the long term, but it is something. Once you pick a character, you pick one of 3 missions or stories to play: catch Wily, rescue Roll, or recover parts. Each mission has 6 of its own unique robot masters you have to contend with, and unlike the previous game, you can now pick which boss to fight freely and without any gimmicky roulette wheel or mystery box, mystery robot gimmick thing of the previous game. From there, it's familiar territory to anyone who has played Power Battle. You fight the robot master, you beat him, you gain his weapon, and you tackle all his buddies until you're left to contend with the mid-boss and eventually the mad scientist himself, Dr. Albert Willy Wawi or something or other. Oh, and there are also other enemies you have to deal with in addition to the robot masters, just to make things a little more interesting, or annoying, whichever way you prefer to look at it. As previously mentioned, Power Fighters makes several improvements to the core gameplay established by Power Battle. On occasion, there will be pickups that will either restore health, restore weapon energy, or give you points. By extension, during a battle, Eddie Flip-Top Thing will drop in to offer a support item that serves as a temporary weapon or defense shield. And this is dependent on the character too. Mega Man and Bass have their dogs to help them out, while Proto Man and Duo will get shields. When you strike a robot master with a weakness weapon, the game will pause for a bit while an animation plays out. A nice little touch to let you know that this is the weapon to use against this particular boss. In addition to that, when a boss nears death or at some point, a little animation will play denoting the second phase of the battle, usually resulting in some differing tactics. And finally, each campaign will eventually provide you with a part that will either enhance your special moves, extend your weapon energy, or give you a super jump, which is a nice little reward for each campaign. The best way to describe Power Fighters is that it's essentially the Mega Man 2 The Power Battles of Mega Man 1. It's in the title, no less. Power Battles laid the groundwork for the gameplay and how it worked, and then along comes Power Fighters to tweak the formula and fix some of the faults to make it truly great. What worked in the previous entry still works well enough here or better, and what didn't work got fixed enough that it feels somewhat refined to work a little better. And while the gameplay has been refined to a point, it doesn't diminish the overall challenge of the game. After all, this was an arcade title designed to take your money. Wouldn't do a good job of it if it were easy peasy. On the flip side of things, while there are refinements to make Power Fighters a somewhat more fulfilling game, it's still very much on the simplistic side of things and still somewhat shallow. I suppose for fans of canon, there are some nice nods to future games at the time or perhaps even future plot developments, but don't go into Power Fighters expecting a life-changing experience. Just go into it expecting a mini boss rush thing and that's what you'll get. And it works fine in that regard, but not much more than that. Much like Power Battle, the Power Fighters bases its visual stylings on the 7th entry in the Mega Man series that appeared on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. But thanks to slightly more advanced hardware, or perhaps just better programming, the characters have more frames of animation and seem much more lively than in that console release, or even the previous Power Battle game. While there are some returning assets from the previous release, including bosses and certain stages, there is some new stuff in here to admire, and they look fine. There's not much else to say. Power Fighters is a bright, vibrant, colorful looking game that does justice to the Mega Man 7's visual style, and that's all there is to it. Again, much like in the previous game, Power Fighters comprises largely remixed versions of pre-existing Mega Man tunes that would eventually make their way over to the Rockman Complete Works line. Unlike the previous game, boss tunes actually match most of the boss encounters, though for some reason Centaur Men and Plant Man, despite having their own tunes in the Rockman 6 Complete Works, has boss tunes from bosses that aren't even in the game. That baffles me. But the one robot who got truly stiffed in this deal is Quickman, who's stuck with this horrible remake of the Mega Man 2 boss tune, a once highly energetic piece of music that got turned into, whatever the hell this is supposed to be. Once again, there are sound effects that sound alright, but there are also voice clips for those who care for that sort of thing. And, well, they're a thing that happened in the game, so yeah. Overall, Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters is a substantial improvement over the previous arcade entry, and in a way feeling like a somewhat more interesting title than Power Battle did, with the various tweaks and additions that give it slightly more flavor. None of these change the reality that this boss rush format is a very simplistic affair, perfect for the arcade atmosphere, not so much for the home format, unless you rope in a second player into the mix, where the game has the potential to truly shine. Regardless, Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters is a fun little romp while it lasts, and if you get the chance to play this one, give it a shot. It won't take up much time.